Right. 3 May 2022. And today I'm joined by my usual guest from Botswana, Dr. Feddious Mutenheri. How are you, doctor?
Very well, Kampakwe. How are you and how is South Africa?
South Africa is doing very well, and I'm very excited to be here with you. And as you know, today is World Press Freedom Day. There is a lot that has been happening around the world. And I think COVID has sort of like assisted to reduce persecution against journalists. But obviously, the focus on journalists is very, very high. What is your take on what has been happening? Let's take, for example, in Zimbabwe, as far as journalism is concerned. Do you think that the Zimbabwe government has been treating journalists fairly?
Well, let me wish everyone, particularly journalists out there, including yourself, Gambakwe, a very, very wonderful World Press Freedom Day. And you asked me about Zimbabwe. I think ever since the coming in of the so-called Second Republic, we haven't seen much of a change in terms of how the press has been treated. We have seen actually little and actually timed and framed opportunities for people like yourselves, like journalists, but we haven't seen the opening up of the press space. You look at ever since we had the POSA and the IPA, you look at what has replaced them. Those pieces of legislation, if you ask me, are much worse than what we had, and we have not seen. We have not seen much of opening that space, because we have seen most journalists either being hounded, or even comedians such as Gonyet, comedians, other comedians out there being hounded by the regime in Zimbabwe. So if you ask me, there is nothing much to celebrate on World Press Freedom Day today. And mostly thanks to the social media, I think it is what has really opened up the space for people who are into journalism. Look at us, 42 years after independence, we still have one television station. 42 years after independence, the few radio stations that we have seen opening are not independent in the very sense of independence itself. They are either attached to the ruling party, or to people who have got connections with the ruling party. There hasn't been really much opening of that space. So it is paltry, Gambako. It is a paltry. It is paltry. Space that we have seen being given to journalists. Anyone who tries to be independent, they are targeted. They will never even be given that space in Zimbabwe. So on this day, where everyone celebrates World Press Freedom Day, one would want to see the government, opening up that space to independent players who may not necessarily have good words for the government, who may not have a very who may not cuddle them. So there is more to do if you ask me about freedom of press in Zimbabwe, Gambako.
Okay, Doc. So as you can see, I'm experiencing load shedding. So my network is very, very bad. I'm also using solar. So the situation here, the electricity situation in South Africa is terrible. But I think this goes to my next question. We have journalists like Chinono in Zimbabwe who wake up every day, every morning, starting at 6 a.m. or even earlier, to always highlight the negatives in our society. There is no day when they don't highlight, even if a car falls off a bridge, they say that is the government. Is that kind of journalism progressive, or there's something that needs to be changed there?
Thank you for that question, Gambakwe. I think I don't want even to single out Hopewell Chin'ono for what you say is his negative reportage about Zimbabwe. And especially yourself, Gambakwe, as a journalist, you should be in the know that freedom of the press means exactly that you highlight issues that you think the government of the day, or that you see that the government of the day should address. And Hopewell Chin'ono, in fact, has done quite a good job in highlighting the various issues that our government needs to attend to. It is only those that feel embarrassed or that feel attacked because they are not doing what they are supposed to do, who will find Chin'ono's reportage negative. But what I think he is doing is that he is zeroing on things that surely our government should have long been attending to, like the issues. I'm actually very impressed with the way he highlights on issues to do with the health care delivery in Zimbabwe. He's showing those very little things, but very important issues. For instance, when he talks about the cancer machines in Zimbabwe, that there is no cancer machine in Zimbabwe. When he talks about maternity theaters, and those are little issues. And when he actually shows to all of us how much it costs, which the government can easily afford, but they lack prioritization. I think those are issues that are very important today if we are to talk of a modern Zimbabwe. So for me, Hopewell Chin'ono is one journalist who has chosen, in fact, to side with the people, who has chosen not to to report on those things that those in power would like to hear. In fact, he is treading where the angels fear to tread, for which he should be celebrated for that, I think.
Okay. Do you then agree that when we take someone like Chin'ono, who was very much not known about 2 years ago, he has now reached a point where he has now become more popular than Chamisa. If Chin'ono says something now, internationally, it becomes more powerful than if Chamisa speaks. Do you agree with me there?
Well, Gambakwe, on that note, I think I want to please indulge me briefly, because I want to protest actually your topic right today, which you have headlined Chin'ono now more popular than Chamisa. What I'm protesting is not necessarily whether it is true or it is false, but I think me and you, if we continue on such topics, we are deviating away from what we should really be discussing. I think the bread and butter issues today especially as we go towards the election, is about policy. We should focus more on policy, on tangible issues such as whose policies make more sense between the CCC and ZANU-PF, who are the major political parties in Zimbabwe. I think this is a very mischievous topic, if you ask me, because if I would ask, when you ask about, when you say Chinono more popular than Chamisa, let me go to the word popular. Who defines popular? And popular for what? And popular for who? Those questions need to be asked when you say that. Why do I ask such questions? Because first and foremost, these are two people who are advocating for one cause, and one cause only, which is to see a free Zimbabwe from a modern day dictatorship or autocratic state. Number one. Number two, these are two people who are in totally two different, and according to your admission, two different sectors. One is a politician, a political leader, and the other a journalist. And for us to want to say who is popular than the other, I think it's mischief. Then I go back to where I said the first question is who defines popularity, or popular for who, and what is that popularity? As far as I am concerned, without pitching the two who are doing sterling work in terms of advocating for change, in terms of being champions for democracy and change in Zimbabwe, I think Advocate Nelson Chamisa, in his own right, has really been endorsed by the people. First, in 2018, there is no doubt that if we were to talk about popularity there, in 2018, he had a massive endorsement by the majority of Zimbabweans. So if I were to answer for you, because I still find this question very mischievous, I would say 2018, which is the one and most statistic we can depend on, showed us who is popular. Forget about any other people you can compare with, but in Zimbabwe, in terms of the politics of Zimbabwe, he is more popular than ZANU-PF, which now holds on to power, even though by now we know that they lost the 2018 election. And if you ask me again, is Advocate Nelson Chamisa popular? I would just point to you the 26th March by-election results, in which Advocate Nelson Chamisa just 2 months after launching a political party, the CCC, his troops managed to garner the majority of seats in the councils, and as well as in parliament. And there is no doubt that the champion for that political party has been Advocate Nelson Chamisa. We've seen him traversing the whole of the country, galvanizing and mobilizing Zimbabweans. And in true fashion of the popularity that he has, we saw that the CCC garnered the majority of votes there. So while I'm answering you under protest that this question does not even arise, I can tell you that the statistics we have clearly show that Advocate Nelson Chamisa and the CCC are the game in town, and that is a fact. In fact, if we are to talk about facts. But then I come to Hopewell Chin'ono. Hopewell Chin'ono, the journalist, has actually done extremely well. Remember, he is an internationally acclaimed journalist, award-winning, and respected in his category as a journalist. And I mean, he has been invited in various places. We know that there is a time when he was supposed to address the editors forum in South Africa, and he was refused by the state to go. But recently he was in Geneva, where he, on an international stage, he highlighted very critical issues that need to be addressed. And as a journalist, I think he is doing extremely well. And if you follow him, whether on Facebook, on Twitter, he has managed to galvanize people around, the objective of change, around the objective of looking at governance in Zimbabwe, which has totally gone to the dogs. And he is one person as well that has done extremely, extremely well. And to compare the two, Advocate Nelson Chamisa and Hopewell Chin'ono, Gambakwe, I think, like I've already said, is maleficence, it's mischief, and it borders on lack of appreciation of what these two stand for. And it is at most divisive, because it seeks to pitch both of them against each other. But like I've already said, Advocate Nelson Chamisa is a leader of a political party that is loved so much by Zimbabweans. And Hopewell Chin'ono is a journalist who is doing exactly what journalists should do, to highlight on what the government of the day should focus on, to question what the government of the day is not doing right, to challenge, to investigate what corruption government is doing. And both these two, I think, complement each other very well.
So, Doc, as you are aware, I'm experiencing stage 2 load shedding, which means I've got 2 hours of load shedding today. And it all happened right at the time when we were supposed to be talking together. So let's bring this to an end. Do you agree that Hopo is being allowed by the Zimbabwe government to live in Zimbabwe freely, to practice his journalism without any hindrance? And does that not mean that the Zimbabwe government is doing a great job in terms of protecting the rights of journalists?
But Gambakwe, don't pretend to have a short memory, and don't pretend that you are not aware of the events in the last 2 years in which we have seen Hopewell Chin'ono dragged, arrested several times, harassed by the state security. I'm sure everyone knows, including you, Gambakwe, that he has been arrested not less than 3 times for the tweets he has put up, and for some frivolous allegations, some of which we now know were not even based at law. We know how recently Hopewell Chin'ono was being, or is still being, intimidated because of his project, his God's project in Murewa. And we now know that it is all about intimidating him because of those issues that he highlights, those issues in which he challenges and confronts government on its way of governance. And to say that the government is allowing him, and that term alone, to say allowing, no one should allow us to live in our own country. We are allowed by birth to live in our own country. But the point is, don't you see the harassment that he is facing? He has always faced. But it's not only him, it's many other journalists in Zimbabwe, Gambakwe. It's not only many other journalists, it's all those who want to see a free Zimbabwe where there is free association, free assembly. Just yesterday, we saw how a triple C, campaign, door-to-door campaign was disrupted by the police and also by ZANU-PF thugs, and all those things are what Zimbabweans, any general Zimbabwean is facing, and not only Hopewell Chin'ono. Whatever the government or the state might do with Hopewell Chin'ono, some of which we know it will be grandstanding if you think he's being allowed to stay in Zimbabwe freely, as you say. But we know, Gambakwe, that the space in Zimbabwe for opposition political parties, for journalists who dare question the government of the day, they live one day at a time, because they never know what will befall them. They never know what will be planned against them. So definitely it's a no, Gambakwe. If you were to ask me, that is Chin'ono and many other journalists who dare question the government are free to carry out their journalistic activities in Zimbabwe. No.
Okay. So I want to end with the question of whether there are really many journalists in Zimbabwe. Do you think the journalists in Zimbabwe can be called journalists in the real sense of the word? Or they're just copying and cutting and pasting from other sources? Take, for example, Chin'ono himself. Is he producing any real investigative news, or is just criticism of ZANU-PF? Which other journalists do we have in Zimbabwe who you can say we have journalists in the country? Is this not that our country doesn't really have much, or they've not done much to produce the quality of journalists that can reach the international standard? Then we end up with people like Hopewell, who are more like critics of the government, not journalists.
Okay, without necessarily referring to Hopewell, as you asked me, but Gambakwe, this is exactly what we have today, is exactly the result, the consequence of 2 decades of an assault on Zimbabwe's press freedom. And this takes you back from 2000 and going into 2003, when the Daily News was banned. And after that, we saw the Daily News, publishing house being bombed. And then we see within the same years, IPA being enacted. And we saw the Zimbabwe Broadcasting Act, the Zimbabwe Broadcasting Corporation and Commercialization Act, rather, being enacted. All those pieces of legislation were meant to stifle journalism, were meant to stifle free press, were meant to stifle young and upcoming talented journalists. But not only that, it even became very difficult for female journalists to come up. But that is not to say there are no journalists that have come out of Zimbabwe, as I'm going to mention to you. But that whole period of a decimation and an attack of press freedom through legislation has led us to where we are, Gambakwe. It is good actually to see people like Hopewell Chin'ono, people who still dare to question government. But go to the Herald and go to the Zimbabwe Broadcasting Corporation. If you want to see what not to be, if one wants to be a journalist, or what journalism should not be, go to ZBC, go to the Herald, go to Chronicle. There, that is where you will find the very worst examples of what journalism should be. These are people who report because they gain trinkets from government. These are people who report because they are scared, they are afraid for their lives. These are people who report that is shoddy reporting, no investigation whatsoever. There are people who just sing for their supper at Herald, at Chronicle, at ZBC. That is what you should be questioning me, or you should be asking me about Gambakwe. But if you ask of people like Hopewell, he is from a generation of few people who can dare to put their lives on the line and question a dictatorship, question authoritarianism. People who know very well that if they were, if they are not free to move around because they are marked, people who every day have to look over their shoulder to see who is following them, simply because he is questioning the government of the day. So Gambakwe, to answer your question, what we have today, that there is a shortage of people like Hopewell, is because of a whole 2 decades of the attack on press freedom itself, and this done through legislation, this done through the type of government that we have today.
Okay, so Doc, I'm sure you have covered a lot, and you see, Gambakwe allows you to say a lot of good things about Hopewell. I've got no worry about it at all. Those are opinions, and obviously, without making fun or joking, Zimbabwe is in a crisis in terms of innovation. And imagine Gambakwe has never attended any journalism school and is running one of the top media houses in the country. Trevor Ncube has been running the biggest media printing companies for over 20 years. And nothing new has come up. The old newspapers that we have, besides talking about government opening up the airwaves, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, these are open. You can count on my one hand, Madam Boss, Mighty T, and a few other people. You can count them who have actually managed to consistently provide news and to create content. I don't think it's an issue of the government only. I also think that Zimbabweans generally are very lazy, and they have not seen the opportunity that is there in media. And this is, I want to say, the dependency and the looking towards government. And this one, I also want to go back to Hoppo. He's one of the people who are very guilty of this. Everything must be done by the government. There's no, people don't think, how can we do this thing ourselves? I think that is the main reason why we have the situation we have now. Because you can run a TV station, you can run a radio station without having to be helped by the government. Right now, TV licenses were advertised. The people who were granted those TV licenses, they've not launched their TV licenses, their TV stations. I think 1 or 2 of them have done so. But the rest, they've just taken those TV licenses and they're sitting with them at home. So I don't think we can blame the Zimbabwe government for people who were given licenses and then failed to launch the TV stations.
But
Do you see my point?
No, but once again, you are choosing to separate the issue of creating media houses from the economic impact that the past 2 decades have had on Zimbabweans in general. Remember, when you talk of creating media houses that have proper structures with proper editorial boards that are competent, it is an investment. And like I've already told you, all this has been stifled by government. From the moment that they started putting up legislation which sought to narrow down who can own a media house. I mean, it's good that in the past 10 years we've seen a shift in social media kind of press. But look, it has always been a preference for people to go into or to rely mostly on media houses that are governed, such as your print media and your television media, which the government totally stifled. But then to expect today people to come up with huge media houses based on social media, and you want to say people are lazy, it's very unfair. They can't be. What has the government done? The government is responsible largely for opening the space. Mostly people who are even operating on social media, they do not know their safety. They are not mostly not governed by local legislation, and therefore there is a lot of confusion out there. Why don't we ask the government why up till today we still have one television station? And the people like Professor Jonathan Moyo are obviously responsible for this. These are people who at one point were very close to power. In fact, were in positions of making decisions or proposals to open up the airwaves, but they did not. What did they do? They put up legislation which sought, like I've already said, to stifle that space. And therefore, there's never been a political will from the government to create that environment to assist and allow investors in these areas to flourish. But we know very well of people who had very great media houses, and the government. What has the government done with them? The Daily News, not the one we have today, was a very promising media house. Don't look very far. How did the government deal with it? It was the largest selling newspaper between 2001 and around 2008. And you are talking of Trevor Ncube himself, the Standard and the independent newspapers. Quite some great, very great, a very great media house that he had. But because of incessant attack on such people who were talented, obviously it killed a whole talent of new journalists who would come to fill in that space. So that's why today, yes, you have young journalists, I should say, who are talented, but they have never been given the space. It's either there is no finance, because we all know how our economy is, and who would fund that? If they were to be funded from other sources, obviously they will be accused of being puppets, being funded by the whites. Or if they were to be funded from any other sources, we know what will befall them. So Gambakwe, it all falls on government. It should be government, or the political will should be there to promote new media houses, to promote journalism in Zimbabwe, which we have not seen in Zimbabwe. and it's actually a sad chapter that we are in. And like I've already said, people like Hopewell Chin'ono is single-handedly trying to show how social media can be used responsibly to still question your government. And I really appreciate the way he uses Twitter, the way he uses Facebook, the way he uses all these social media platforms. And my wish is that other new and young journalists can learn from that and learn to responsibly report on exactly what is happening in Zimbabwe.
Okay, Doc, I think this has been a great discussion on media. I obviously deliberately put the topic to irritate and annoy the CCC. I like that. I like doing that.
I told you, that topic.
I'm sure Ostalos, in fact, I were like sitting in the office saying, "What's happening? Is Hopewell Chin'ono now more popular than Chamisa?" They take themselves too seriously, these guys. That's one thing about this, the CCC guys. They tend to feel like they're not Zimbabweans. They're living in this bubble where people from outside should see them as angels and everyone else is evil. Whereas there's this middle ground where we're all Zimbabweans and we can all do well together. I think this is where Hopewell kind of misses it. In fact, Hopewell is more popular than Chamisa. He's more popular than Ostalos. He's more popular than Mahere, because he's managed to get an audience. And you know why he's got that audience? Because people outside Zimbabwe, they want to hear more bad things about Zimbabwe. If you say more and more bad things about Zimbabwe, you attract more and more attention. And I think that is coming to an end. It will work for a while. But we're all getting poorer and poorer because of this narrative that we're pushing out there. I don't agree that the government is the only problem in Zimbabwe, Doc. I think the problem in Zimbabwe is everyone, including the people that complain every day about the country. Wopo is in Zimbabwe right now. He has never one day said anything good that is happening in Zimbabwe. Even the private sector, which is thriving in Zimbabwe right now, he has never gone out to say what good is happening in the construction sector, in the mining sector. The general atmosphere in Zimbabwe is a country that is growing. When I go to Zimbabwe, and I've always said this to you, but he always chooses to ignore that. Also, this is translating to the CCC. It's becoming a party that does not see anything good that happens in the country. When they get into office, people are going to do the same. They are going to turn against them. They will always be criticizing the government. It will become a culture in our country to criticize the government.
Gambagwe, to hold you there, I think in this case, it is the government itself actually that has popularized these people that you are talking about. Because when they are questioned on one bad thing they have done, when they are questioned on one corrupt thing they have done, take for instance with Hopewell Chin'ono's and the drugs scandal. And then what does the government do? They quickly arrest him because they realize that he has exposed some in the echelons. And by doing so, they popularize him. And because this is his trade, he is an investigative journalist who seeks to expose those shady activities that happen in government. And the government continues to arrest him. And what do? They make him even more popular, because as an international journalist, obviously there are protests from international organizations, and in doing so, they have created their own Frankenstein in him, and I think he is doing a good job, Zimbabwe. And I don't even think that you should say he doesn't see anything positive. If he's highlighting on those negatives, why doesn't the government attend to those negatives and prove him wrong? Instead, what do? They conjure up, allegations that he stole goats and stuff like that. But also, Gambakwe, not only that, I think you saying that he's more popular than this and that is mere conjecture, because you are simply basing on the likes you see on his posts, or merely on the fact that he is one very prominent journalist who always bring newsworthy issues onto the fore. But besides, what is on point here is that Hopewell is doing a good job as a journalist. And by the way, the Triple C is more popular because we have seen what the election results have produced through them.
Okay, so that brings us to the rallies. Chamisa has been struggling to get people to listen to him. Ever since the by-elections, it's been very confusing. He's been unable to put out a clear message. So I think this weekend is going to be, if I'm not mistaken, Majambuzi. And then these rallies are very confusing. I don't know what he's trying to achieve in these rallies that he's doing. And you see that I'm doing my bit, right? I'm criticizing Chamisa. And Hopo is criticizing.
you are a problem. You are.
I'm just doing it so that you can see what it means. Like, I'm criticizing Chamisa. How do you feel when I criticize Chamisa?
No, I honestly, if you ask me, from all our broadcasts over time, I just think that you have been trying to prove a point, and God alone knows what point you have been trying to prove, because you have not had any good messages about Advocate Chamisa. So how I feel is that, as you advocate also for balanced journalism, for journalism that does not seek to only attack, or journalism that does not seek to paint and portray in the negative, why haven't you also put up something that shows that Advocate Nelson Chamisa has actually confounded many? Here is a man that over the past 2 years, no one would have thought his political life, we will see his political life again. We would have never thought that he will ever again address a crowd such as what we have seen across the country: Mutare, Mashingo, Gokwe, Gweru, Kwekwe, name the places. But to show that he is a strategic person, or that he is the person with the message that the majority of Zimbabweans, have gained traction with, and to show that he's the best foot forward. In fact, foremostly, that he's the hope of the country for any change that we expect. I've not seen anything coming from you, Gambakwe. So in that regard, therefore, how I feel is that you have not been fair on Advocate Nelson Chamisa. But I like the fact that he seems not to be miffed or pipped by that kind of view from you, Gambakwe, if he ever listens to you.
Chamisa listens to me every day. Right now, Chamisa, Hopo, Mahere, Ostalos, Wende, Biti, they're here. They're watching, and they watch every day, because one thing I do, and this is not a joke. You know that I've been joking a lot. These guys get advice and strategy and different views. What is annoying is someone who comes every day and says the same thing over and over again, opposing one party and not giving. You have seen me criticizing ZANU-PF, right? A lot.
No, I haven't.
We have not removed all the videos that I did criticizing ZANU-PF. They're still there, including very dangerous videos on President Mnangagwa, Vice President Chiwenga, Opam Chinguri, Vice President Mohadi. All those videos are still there. Gambakwe is the most balanced platform you can ever find. The only thing is, it's very painful when your person is criticized. It drives people crazy. If I start criticizing President Mnangagwa today for 5 days, everyone in ZANU-PF is going to hate me. And there's a season, right? So this season is, we need to deal with Chamisa. Chamisa has got serious weaknesses. I can't suddenly find him strong during a season when I'm criticizing his weaknesses. And I guess it's the same for Hopewell. He is finding weaknesses in ZANU-PF, and he lives in Zimbabwe. Unlike me, I don't live in Zimbabwe. If Chamisa people wanted to go after me, they'll find it very hard to go after me here. They'll probably find it easier when I'm at home to get to go after me. So I guess Zimbabwe is actually a balanced place for journalists. You are allowed to criticize whoever you want to criticize. It's not like if you go to Rwanda, right? Or if you go to Uganda, those countries like that, you can't just go there and start criticizing the government. Or if you go to Kenya, those countries, they are well respected internationally, but journalists there, they are in a lot of trouble. But some journalists actually die in those countries.
Okay, Gambakwe, I hear you. In the same vein in which you say this is the season for you to criticize Advocate Chamisa, I'm sure by that statement you accept that Hopewell Chin'ono is very much on the right path when he criticizes government or when he exposes their shortcomings. And before we even end, Gambakwe, I think you are missing the point. Today, on Press Freedom Day, it would be amiss for us even to talk about Itai Dzamara, who is a journalist who, as we know, has disappeared. And it is well known that it was a case of abduction by state agents. And that alone is still a mark. As long as he's not found, as long as that chapter is not closed about Itai Dzamara, there is no way, Gambakwe, you can come and pontificate that Zimbabwe is a balanced place to carry out journalism. And we know the likes of Mcheyiwa, we know the likes of many other journalists that have suffered in Zimbabwe. And all those are reminders to all those who will be critical journalists that what will befall you if you dare to practice proper journalism. Hopewell Chin'ono, who every day I'm sure suffers in harassment and because of his kind of reporting, is again a very clear and current example of how journalism in Zimbabwe is treated. But the fact, like I've already said to you, the fact that we still have one television station, Gambakwe, 42 years after independence, you have not even responded on that. The fact that we still have that same television only broadcasting ZANU-PF rallies, ZANU-PF messages in the positive, with so much propaganda, and anything about CCC or opposition is in the negative. It shows you what kind of a country we are. Go to the Herald, you will see that if it's not George Charamba spewing such vitriol and things that actually subversive, what kind of journalism is our own state or our own government promoting? And therefore, what I'm saying is that people like, just like you, do what you want because you have your own free editorial policy and you are in a country that respects freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom of expression. South Africa is such a state where you find all the types of media houses existing, and they exist with real freedom. And you are broadcasting from there. But in Zimbabwe, I'm sorry to say, not many are free to do it the way you are doing it. And therefore, that's why you picked on people like Mighty Madam Boss, and those who are literally into entertainment, not necessarily into political reporting, which we all know that it's still dangerous, Gambako.
Right, Doc. I really enjoyed talking to you. It's exactly 2200 and my electricity is just about to come, and it will cut me off from solar to electricity if we continue. So let's bring this to an end. Obviously, we're all brothers. You know what? You see me criticizing Hopewell daily and Chamisa daily and all these people. I will gain nothing from all this criticism. But if we work together, if we do what we're trying to do in Kariba, what we're trying to do with the projects that we're trying to do, our people will leave South Africa, where they are hated. No, not the hatred of talking, like real hatred, just for being here. And we'll become a people that are respected among other countries. I do not agree with what Hope was doing. I want to keep repeating this, of focusing on the negatives. And I think one day he's going to change. He is the only journalist in Zimbabwe who only reports negative stuff about Zimbabwe. The rest of the journalists, they're balanced. If you look at Trevor is in the Presidential Advisory Committee, but he's very balanced. One day he talks about the bad things that is happening, and another day he talks about the good things that are happening. Zimbabwe is not a collapsed state. It's a country that is functional. People are making money. People are rich in Zimbabwe. People are building houses. Kids are growing up in our country. People are going to varsity. The everyday narrative that Zimbabwe is collapsed, that's wrong. I do not agree with that. And that is the last word I want to leave with you, Doc. What is the last thing that you would like to say to us before we close?
You always become controversial when we are about to end. And definitely you are at it right now. But safe to say that Gambakwe, on as we celebrate World Press Freedom Day, I think it would have been good for you to end by saying, by actually complimenting what Hopewell is doing, just as what you are doing, because journalism is exactly what Hopewell is doing, what you are doing, what even people in Herald are doing, what people in ZBC are doing. But the question we should ask all of them, the question we should ask all of you as journalists is, what is your motive? What is behind what you are doing? For instance, if I was to ask you, Gambakwe, as a journalist, what motivates you? Is what motivates you the idea that freedom of the press is the basis of a democratic state like Zimbabwe? Same applies to Chinono. Should be asked the same question. People in Herald, the way they report, are their consciences clean? Can they be asked and say to say they are doing it for the development of the country, or for partisan purposes, or for the little trappings of power and trinkets that they get from politicians? That is the major question that journalists like yourselves should be asking yourselves. And I want to think that for those who dare question the governments of the day, because Gambakwe, you must understand the role of the press as the fourth estate. If you go to the United States, where it came from, the role of the state is not to sing like a choir with the government, is not to agree with the government of the day. Their role, the major role that Gambakwe, even you yourself should play, any press should play, is to question the government of the day, is to expose corruption within government. It is to expose those issues that go against the taxpayers, that go against the generality of the people. Well, once we have such kind of journalism, which exactly Hopewell is doing, which he is showing by example, then we have the fourth estate, not people who are rent seekers and they call themselves journalists, not people who are political activists and they hide under the moniker that we are journalists. No. On World Freedom, on World Press Freedom Day today, Gambakwe, I choose to celebrate those journalists like Hopewell Chin'ono and others who dare question the government, even though their lives sometimes are in danger. Thank you very much.
Yes, Doc, thank you very much. And
don't answer me.
I'm not answering you, Doc. I'm concluding. I've had enough talking today. I'm just about to go and do my workout. Okay. You know that I do my workout from 10 p.m. to 12 p.m. So I'm just about to go now. Yeah.
All right.
Sure, Doc. Good night, and I really appreciate everyone who's watching. Thank you very much, Doc. When are you coming to South Africa?
Good night to you. Remember, I said I would be coming before the end of April, but now it is just by the end of May. I will be in South Africa very soon. In about a week or a week and a half, I'll be contacting you, Gambakwe.
Cool. Thank you very much, Doc. I'll see you when you get here.
Cheers, Gambakwe. Good night to all our viewers.
Uyo, uko.